Latest edition of ESPN FC. I'm Dan Thomas, joined in the studio today by Craig Burley and Don Hutchinson. 3 more matches in the Euros for us to reflect on throughout today's show. We'll kick things off with the favourites for the tournament, England, and taking on Serbia. Jude Bellingham would open the scoring after 13 minutes, and that was pretty much that for the game. England sat back, Serbia were the better team in the second half. Harry Kane did hit the crossbar, but it really was a poor performance from England, but they do get the victory, the 3 points, to open up their tournament start as we welcome in Mark Ogden is with us, Mario Malchior as well, before we go to them. Let's kick things off in the studio. Job done, I suppose.
It was hard work watching you.
Oh, it was hard work watching them.
I think a wholly uninspiring performance from England. We saw, Germany take a very poor Scotland side apart. We saw Spain dismantle an experienced Croatian side. And we saw England surrender really a lot of possession, way too much, to a very mediocre Serbia side. And ironically, the first 15 minutes was actually quite upbeat from England, passing and moving and Foden drifting off the left and linking up with Bellingham and looking a threat to get the goal. It was an excellent goal, and Bellingham charging through the middle of the park, as you'd expect. It's the trademark. And then it sort of just went a little flat, and Serbia had a couple of half chances. And then in the second half, from the moment the ball was kicked off in the second half, England were on the edge of their own box. And this is, and maybe there's some sort of plan here to conserve energy. I don't know. I don't think so. And it was worrying that England just didn't go and make a statement and say, here's 2 or 3 goals, we're killing the game off, we're making the substitutions, and this is a cakewalk. That's not the case. And that's going to be, I think, some of the criticism that comes Gareth Southgate's way. He'll say, like you said, job done, 3 points. But trust me, had this been a better side today than Serbia, and England had played in this manner in terms of sitting deep and isolating Harry Kane, this could easily have been a different result.
That's the point, isn't it? To take forward that if this was a proper opposition, someone who could take their chances, control the ball in the final third, we'd be having a completely different conversation.
Yes, 100%. I think watching the England side today, I think it's all mental. I don't think it was tactics from Southgate. He wouldn't have said to his team, once we go on and look there, why don't we just sit back? I think it's a mentality shift in the players that they need to get rid of as quick as possible.
But these are experienced players that have won the Champions League, they won the Premier League.
Why is Southgate not out on the touchline? I know they've won it. Well, why is he not on the touchline saying, if that was a Klopp, if that was a top-class coach,
he's not that way.
He's out there and he's going,
he's not
get
that
up.
Way. He's not that way.
15, 20 yards up the field, he can passing the ball. It's his job to do that.
Yeah, but he's not the type of manager. He wouldn't do it verbally. What he could have done is took Phil Foden off and put Anthony Gordon on. Then you've got fresh legs. You've got a dynamic there when Jared Bowen came on. There's something different late on in the game.
What do you mean mentality? Just take us through what they're thinking.
Well, go back to the Euro final when they played Italy and they were winning 1-0. Italy were all over the place. It was a prime example where England should have got their foot down and won that game 2-3-4. They didn't. They went 1-0 up and they panicked a little bit. They looked at the scoreline. They tried to protect the scoreline. They think possession is king because they're winning 1-0. That's something that I saw today in England. You go 1-0 up, and Craig's right, 15 minutes, they were really good. Bellingham was off the charts good. Him and Saka, I thought, were the best 2 players on the pitch by a country mile. Some players were invisible. And I think it's nerves. I think it's getting over the line where they might grow into the tournament. It might be a case where you're in your first game, you've seen all the big sides make a statement, they've got really good wins, scored lots of goals. They were probably thinking after an hour, we'll take a 1-0 win here and we'll face the criticism and we'll move on to game 2. That's the only thing I can think of, but I think it's mental.
Well, England are not good enough to defend the game at 1 defensively.
Oh, just today, I meant. Because France would have tore them apart.
Yeah, even today that was edgy. England are not good enough defensively to just see a game out of 1-0. That's not a good enough back four at this level to do that. There was a moment in the second half, it was early in the second half, when, and I'll get to this side of the field a little bit later after the lads, but Jude Bellingham chased back into the left-back area as he does, and he won a tackle, and he won England a throw-in, and then he turned to the rest of the back four and he went, get up!
Yeah.
Up! And his frustration was evident to see.
Mark, obviously, as a fellow Englishman, was that as hard a watch for you as it was for me?
It wasn't great, was it? But I think we have to accept that it is the first game of the tournament. This sort of performances happen. But what struck me is that the guys are talking about how England played, certainly second half, how slow it was, and how ponderous it was, and how unambitious it was. A lot of these guys play for Liverpool, they play for Man City, play for Arsenal, and in their nature is to go forward and win the 1-0 up, to go for a second, to go for a third. So it's just when they put on that white shirt, whether that shirt weighs so heavily that they're kind of restricted or they're constricted, or there's something about them when they play for England that they don't play as they do for the club sides. And it's a concern because Serbia are probably the second best team in the group, so it probably will get easier for England from now on in this group, and they'll go through quite easily. But Serbia aren't a top team, so when they face a team like a Spain or an Italy or a France in the semi-finals, if they get that far, it's going to be so much harder because they were conceding possession to Serbia's second half, and Serbia had some good chances in the last 15 minutes. They should maybe have taken one of them. So that'd be the concern, that it's the same old story repeating itself with England, whereby they can't keep the ball against teams that can pass it even half well. The second half possession stats, I think Serbia had the most possession. England should be dominating possession. The players can do it for the clubs. So why they can't do it for the country, I don't know. But it's a worry because we've seen better teams already this tournament. And I think against those teams, it'll be the same old story again. England will play well. They'll have all the energy. They'll be full of commitment. But when it comes to keeping the ball and do something with it, that's when they not fall apart, but that's when they fall down. And we've seen it before. Croatia in 2018, Italy in 2020, France in 2022. When they play against a team that can pass the ball better than them and be more decisive, they lose.
Mario, everything was so slow and sideways and backwards at times from players that we know who are so dynamic for their club sides. Why did we see such a shift in attitude today?
Yeah, look, you know, Mark highlighted, the jersey could wait maybe a little bit more, and also the expectations, you understand? Because it's not only that England is watching them, it's also in my country, where I am now, in Holland, it's everybody's watching England. Why? Because they're so talented. So then when you watch them and you see them going about it, it's sometimes, I ask myself, the season can be really tough, the Premier League is not an easy season, I know that. But still, when they come to tournaments, sometimes it feels like that could be an answer to their energy levels. And what I also feel is like, I don't want to be too hard because it's the first game. And we all know the first game, you don't have to play your best game. And it's always been like that. Every tournament where any country plays, it's not the first game is their best. It's just how you grow into it and making sure that you advance. That will be the only positive thing that I have to say about England, that they can grow and keep the momentum. But the one thing is, when I talk about the attackers, they're going quiet. I was waiting for Harry Kane. The only thing I saw was him making that header with hitting the crossbar. I was like, wow. Why did it took him so long? Because this is the Harry Kane that we clearly all of us admire. So I was surprised that he was that quiet for so long.
But was Harry Kane a victim of the way in which the 10 players behind him
were playing? Yeah, a little bit, or maybe a lot. But I can already see, and I don't mean this as like a Scottish perspective, because that's, we're talking about a team, England, that are one of the strongest and one of the favourites, albeit have some issues. I can already see a problem in this England team involving one of the best players, and that's Phil Foden. And I think better managers and better teams will pick this tactically out, is that Phil Foden on that left-hand side, because Bukayo Saka plays right, wants to drift. At Man City, he plays on the right, he plays on number 10. He wants to drift and he wants to link up with Jude Bellingham, and that's great. And when they link up and they go forward, and maybe they'll create better chances as the games go on. But if nobody fills in that left-hand side, and I talked about Bellingham doing it in the second half, and he did, but I think managers will pinpoint the fact that Saka is quite rigid on the right, but Foden has a license. Certainly, I don't know if Southgate gives him the license, but I'd imagine he does. Foden has a license to go and join in, to drift. And Bellingham, and they want to join in with the strikers, and that's fine. But when better teams will exploit that, Don kept saying during the game, there's a switchy play on there, there's a switchy play on there. Now, Serbia wasn't good enough to do it, but better managers and better teams will be looking at the video and go, we can get at England's left-hand side, we suck them in, Foden will drift inside, he'll look to link up with Bellingham. If we can win it quickly, there's going to be a big gap down our right, their left, we can exploit that. Because on the other side, Saka is quite, as I said, he's quite rigid on the way he plays. And I think that might be an issue for Southgate going forward. He's not going. He's not going to drop Foden. Don't get me wrong. He has to find a way to get these players in, but get the balance.
How does he find that?
See, though, tactically, when you look at where Saka plays right side, he's got a right back behind him in Kyle Walker that loves to bomb on and get forward. Phil Foden hasn't got that luxury. So when you look at it on paper and you see Phil Foden's position, drifting in is the best thing to do if you've got a fullback on the left-hand side that likes to get in behind. That's the way managers like to work. He hasn't. He's got Kieran Trippier, who's quite conservative, and he's a right-footed player. So when Phil Foden comes into that space, we said first 50 minutes when, look at it, it's quite good. Like Foden's really close to Harry Kane. Bellingham is really close to Harry Kane. It's good. Then what happens is you lose a bit of possession. You lose that little bit of confidence. You lose half a yard. And then all of a sudden that space, as Craig's saying, for the opposition is there to pick England off. So I would imagine behind the scenes, if Luke Shaw can get fit for the next game or the game after, that might suit Phil Foden an awful lot more if he is going to then drift inside for someone like Shaw, who's a left-sided player who likes to get forward, to try and get on the overlap, because you see it on the right-hand side.
But he's never going to be fit enough, is he?
Not sure.
He's never going to be fit enough to do that. I mean, he's never, that's a big ask. I've always said it's a big ask for somebody who hasn't played for months to come into this level of
That's
football.
the difference tactically, is when you look at Saka, Walker, Foden, Trippier.
And the Foden thing is, he's such a talented player, and you want to get him and Bellingham on. England want these players, Saka, Bellingham, Foden. They want them heavily involved, right? Because that's where they get the best out of them, with Rice backing up from behind. And the way Foden does that, generally, is not standing on the left-hand side, because that's not what he does for Man City. So it's his natural instinct to drift. And I think as this competition goes on, we're going to see that potentially as a problematic area for England, and something maybe Southgate will address, or maybe it won't. The other scenario is the Trent Alexander-Arnold question for me was not answered.
Yeah, let's address that. Obviously, he was
not that he was
lining up alongside Declan Rice. Obviously, looking to offer maybe something different with his passing ability. Mark, what did we learn today about his potential to play in that position going forward?
I don't think he's dynamic enough. I don't think he's quick enough with the ball at his feet, and that isn't his role. And it reminds you a little bit of when David Beckham started playing that role back in, the tail end of his career. He just wants to spray the ball around, and Trent does a little bit more than that. But I don't think he's the dynamic midfielder that you want. If you're going to play in some of that position, play somebody who plays there. I know Kobbie Mainoo is inexperienced at Man United, Adam Wharton even less experienced at Crystal Palace, but at least that is the role they play for their club. And I think Alexander-Arnold, it's almost like it's a celebrity move for him. He's done really well at right back, and he sprays the ball in, but he can't defend quite well enough. So let's find a role for him. But he's not a central midfielder, and I don't think it works. And I think against a better team who pass the ball quickly, a Croatia, for instance, or a better version of Croatia now, passing the ball in little triangles, I don't think he's quick enough to get around that area to actually be an advantage to the England team. So I don't think it works, and I don't think he's going to play at right back. So I think the only place he should play Trent Alexander-Arnold is wide on the right as a right wing back, but I don't think that's going to happen. But for me, it didn't work in that midfield role because he's, like I say, he's just not quick enough with the ball at his feet. He just wants to spray the ball long all the time.
It's a weird turnaround, Augie, isn't it? Because Trent Alexander-Arnold wasn't, going back probably 12 months, 18 months, couldn't even get in the England squad because Southgate thought he wasn't a solid enough defender, which is fair,
yeah.
Which is a good argument because we can't really debate that. And all of a sudden now he's in the England squad again, but he's in there because he's going to play in the middle of the park. It seems to me that he's scratching about in that area. It's interesting you mentioned Adam Wharton, who's been absolutely terrific since he's been at Crystal Palace from Blackburn. But that's a big call, isn't it, to put somebody like him in a tournament like this?
It is, but then, why pick him in the first place? Why overlook a player who plays that role really well in favour of a guy that doesn't quite know what his best position is? Alexander-Arnold plays a lot of Hollywood passes, great, but I think you've got to make something at the end of it. And I just don't think he's suited to this team. I don't think he has the defensive attributes in that holding midfield role or that defensive midfield role to bring anything to the game. And England can get away with it against Serbia. They'll get away with it against Denmark and Slovenia. But as soon as they play against a good team, as you guys know, that pass the ball quickly in the final third, it'll be chasing shadows. And that's what England don't need. They need somebody who can actually do that job that is required of him. And Wharton does it really well. And so does Mainoo. So you pick them in the squad, use them.
What do you think, Mario? Oh, Mario's gone. What's interesting, Mark, I thought overall, if we have one positive from this performance, is we've seen it from, right, you go take it back to Gascoigne, you've got Beckham, you've obviously got Rooney. like the poster child for these England sides. A lot of pressure on them and very much commercials here. Just got Jude Bellingham everywhere. He showed no sign of any nerves or any sort of desire to hide, did he? Obviously scoring the goal. But as Craig said, trying to be that leader on the pitch.
You know what's amazing about Bellingham? He's not even 21 yet. He's 21 at the end of June, so he's still 20 years old, and he's playing like a guy in his late 20s. He's just carrying that team, and a brilliant kind of old school, midfielders go, arriving into the penalty area late, heading the ball in the back of the net. He has got everything that you need, and I think for me, he's the captain of that side. It's not Harry Kane; it's Jude Bellingham. He's 20 years old. And I think if he stays fit, England have got a chance. But I think he just needs a bit of a more of a solid base behind him, so that when they're playing against the better teams, he can do what he does best, rather than being dragged back into defensive positions. But he's a superstar, isn't he? I think we all get a bit kind of fed up with Ballon d'Or talk, but he's a candidate for it. He's one of those players that has got everything. I think England have got a world-class player in the midfield at the moment. I think he can make England go all the way, but there's a lot of issues in that team to address before he does that.
Oh, just see it. Just going to see it. What? It was like you at Wembley in 1990.
Oh my goodness!
I had to say
Don't even compare this.
No, but
this guy.
No.
This guy's a phenomenal.
No, I understand. I'm not comparing you.
The goal, you're
I
comparing the goal.
I thought you were. Folks, I've not been drinking before I come on here. I'm not comparing him with you. I'm saying Scotland, England at Wembley, 99 when you scored. The way that, and it was Tony Adams, and the way the back post, Don comes in, physically outmuscles him, gets up. We talk about Jude Bellingham.
Bullied the defender today, didn't he?
He saw that ball. Yeah. The Bellinghams, he's had all the plaudits this year, but that was somebody that knew I might take a whack here.
Yeah.
But as a midfielder, you see it, and he attacked it, and it was a full-back. It was tucking around, and he just absolutely smashed him out of the way. Bang! He was the only one getting.
He's gold dust. He absolutely is. You could write a book in the last 2 years of what he's done. Top man at Real Madrid, player of the year. £100 million player. What shirt do you want? I'll have Zidane's, please. Completely boss it. You watch him play, and he's got a strut, and he's got an arrogant strut, like in a nice way, like where he absolutely owns the pitch, and everyone feeds off him. You just watch him, you see him, and you see the way he plays, the way he's receiving the ball. As Oggy said there, and Mario said, he's bossing the teammates. He wants the ball, demands it. Craig said there, he's getting his back four up. He's a future England captain without a shadow of a doubt.
And did you mention the word nerves?
Yeah.
Yes.
Mario's back, obviously.
Yeah.
Back from his sabbatical.
Yes.
Has a cup of coffee. A little glass of wine. Come back, keep chatting, lads. You mentioned nerves. Honestly, I've not seen, and he must be. There must be.
He is, Craig.
No, but I have not seen one iota of this guy as a 16-year-old. Now, you're a 16-year-old. You go to Germany. You're in a foreign country. You're away from your family. You're playing for a big club. He must have had the butterflies then. He must have been nervous. But since then, as his career has just blossomed, there has been no sign for me with Jude Bellingham that we could be in a World Cup final. And I think he approaches it the same way because he has supreme confidence. And not many people have that. Supreme confidence in his own ability, as Oggy said. But for it to happen, it's for somebody at such a young age, it is quite incredible.
And to that point, it was no surprise to see him play with that confidence today, Marion, because we've seen him do it every step of his career.
No, I think what you guys already highlighted. I think when you watch a player, and I think it's just a human thing. I think when you watch him and he's that confident, I think it's just a moment that you have to enjoy it. And I think the people that don't like the confidence of him is probably people that are shy away themselves and they don't know how it feels. But when you watch him, how comfortable he is, it's not only because he's confident because he wants to be, no, because he possesses that much of a talented player. And when you see him play, the way he picks up the ball, and if you see how the players give him the ball, that's very important there, because sometimes when you play in a football team and you demand the ball, you don't get it all the time. But when you get it every time you ask for it, that says enough about your ability and about how the team is watching you. And that's what I saw today, like how he buzzes around. And then, Craig also tapped into Foden when he plays on that side. The only worry I have with him being so free, and if Foden would look for another freedom as well, like he is looking for it, I'm worried for the break that somebody will hit England with. If they attack and they become vulnerable when someone hits them on the break and they are not in position to stop that break. That's the only question, because if you have one free man, you play like, okay, it could be, 10 against them. But if you have 2, then you start questioning yourself and seeing if you can handle that. Against the bigger boys, there could be a question. And then even having a great Bellingham will be a big question mark for England.
I wonder at all if England at some point are going to say, do you know what? I'm not going to worry about who's going to fill in next to Declan Rice. I'm not going to worry about putting a young Kobe Miner, a young Adam Wharton, a fullback in there, a Conor Gallagher who he's a decent, he runs about, right? I think he's a bit of a bull in a china shop, to be honest with you. I wonder if he says at some point, do you know what? I've made a statement by my squad. I bumped a lot of the more experienced players. Some of the ones I've been loyal to. Brought a lot of youngsters, a lot of talent. I'm going to set Declan Rice and I'm going to get Bellingham and Foden. And I might bring Anthony Gordon in to run the left and Bukayo Saka to run the right. And we're going to scare people to death. And it's going to put a big task on Declan Rice. But guess what? Jude Bellingham is an all-round midfielder. He can do both. He can get back, he can sit beside Rice, he can get up and attack. And that would give them, to me, okay, you're taking out a little bit more solidity in the midfield, but you're getting people in position. You got a Gordon that can stop a fullback, you got a Saka that can stop a fullback, and you got 2 players that frighten the life out of you with Declan Rice, who, by the way, can get all over the place. He can get all over the field. I don't think that will happen, but if I was playing against England and they did that, I'd be like, that's a statement.
I think the worry when you watch England is how often they give the ball away. They're not a Spain, they're not a side like who's just going to keep the ball. So when you watch England, we watched it today, and they give the ball away so many times, and that's why you fear for them. Because what are they? Are they a team that can play in transition, or are they a player that's going to play on the counter attack? Yes, they can, but they're not a side to me when I watch them thinking they can dictate the game. They're going to keep the ball for awful long periods. I don't see that in them.
Well, that's down to the manager.
Yep.
Because every player that plays in that team plays in teams that dominate possession. Rice at Arsenal, Bellingham at Real Madrid, Saka, Foden, Kane at Bayern Munich. It's all teams that are used to possessing the ball. John Stones from the back. So, you know, as Mark said, it's match day 1. It's 3 points. But I think there is enough there in this England performance, if I was other teams in this competition, to look and say, yep, that's where we can get at this side.
Well, it's 3 points that puts them top of the table, because we saw in the other group game earlier today, Slovenia and Denmark played out an entertaining 1-1 draw, actually. It turned out to be, in the end, Denmark, a better team in the first half. Christian Eriksen would open the scoring, but Slovenia gained confidence. Then they, in the second half, we saw Jansa score to get the equaliser. In fact, Slovenia could have gone on to win it all, but in the end, it's a point apiece. What was interesting watching this game, Craig, but I thought about you, actually, because obviously when Christian Eriksen collapsed at the last Euros, you were doing the coverage there, and it was, everybody thought the worst. And here we are, fairy tale stuff. He comes back, first game for Denmark in the Euros, and he scores.
That's incredible. And you're right. Like everybody that day, we thought we were going to be seeing and witnessing the worst case scenario. And to come back, and obviously credit to everybody that was involved medically in Copenhagen that day, but to come back, you know, pick his career up, really, and the doctors did a great job for him, and finds himself at Manchester United, albeit their story's not been great recently, but he finds himself back at this huge club. And then he's back at the Euros and scoring. You know, I think is it the oldest player to score for Denmark, I think, or something like that, at Euros. It doesn't really matter. He's just scoring. And I was listening to a bit of, was it Peter Schmeichel was on today talking about the former Danish keeper, saying he wants to see him in a much more forward position, and lo and behold, he gets this goal. So it's an incredible story. But I just feel, in terms of Denmark, as every year goes past, from that Euros, they just seem a little bit more limited. They just seem like a limited side, and again, we saw that today.
How would you sum up the game, Don?
Pardon?
How would you sum up the game?
Well, it's all about Christian Eriksen. I mean, I was in the hotel room when you guys were at work, and I was watching the same thing, and I was absolutely devastated. I couldn't watch the telly. Then you come in, and then fast forward a few years, and he gets the goal. It's quite romantic. But in terms of the game, Denmark had their chances. Actually, ironically, Christian Eriksen should have put them 2-0 up. He missed a little bit of a sitter on his left foot. And then it's the type of game where it's 1-0. You haven't put Slovenia away. The opposition might just get half a chance. They got one, took it, and then they struggled from there. But I agree with Craig. I think you watch Denmark now, they just look like a little bit slower. So they can do okay. I don't think they'll go through the group, but I watch them and I fear for them a little bit.
Elsewhere in the early game at Hamburg, we saw Poland take on the Netherlands. It'll be Poland who would open the scoring, despite the fact, of course, there was no Lewandowski. He was out injured. Buska would open the scoring for Poland, but Netherlands would get themselves back into the game. Gakpo, huge deflection, would see him make it 1-1. And then, who else? Wout Weghorst, off the bench, would score to give the Dutch all 3 points. A big win, of course, for them, Mario, especially considering they were 1-0 down.
Yeah, no, definitely, because, before the game started, we already, Holland was confident that they were going to win this game. The confidence was rising, but we always knew that Poland, the way they answered also without Lewandowski, people thought like, okay, this is going to be an easier task. But you heard the coach talking and said he was holding out till the last minute of the game when he gave out the starting 11 to show that he wasn't starting. Then they get the corner. I'm not a zone marking guy. I don't like it. Yeah, Buska, he comes up, flicks the ball, boom, 1-0 down. The whole game, the tactic changes. Why? It was better for Holland because they had to attack. So they couldn't sit and try to control too much in the sense of like slowing it down. No, they had to speed up the game. Okay, Gakpo deflection. And then, the big man comes on. That is why he's in the national team. People ask, why is he not starting? He's not starting because it's not the type of football that Koeman wants to play. He wants to play with speed and attractive football. Weghorst is the guy that brings out the solution when the other part doesn't work. You put him on, and this is nothing new, because even when I was playing in the national team, we always had one player that would do that job, and he's doing that job. Comes on and he scores.
He most certainly does. Mark, you were there. What was the atmosphere like?
Oh, it was fantastic. It's been great in Hamburg all day. I mean, the Dutch fans are amazing. They've travelled from just across the border. They really made it an occasion, as the Poles did. But they're a funny team to watch, the Dutch, because, they're great technically, and, Reinders look good in midfield, but they haven't got a cutting edge. They've got some good attacking players in Gakpo and Depay, and obviously Weghorst came on the score. But if they'd had just one of the many great strikers they've had in the past, Van Basten, Van Nistelrooy, Kluivert, Van Persie, Bergkamp, they'd have a chance. But they're so limited going forward, and I just think when they come up against a top team again, they'll find it very difficult without the cutting edge. I mean, Depay, amazingly, is second only to Van Persie in terms of the Netherlands' all-time top scorers, but he was awful today. But he's walking around with his headband on, which suggests that, he's, I thought it was John McEnroe first, but he was just got his number 10 on his head. And it clearly rates himself more than he should do, because he just doesn't have that cutting edge, even though he's got the goal. He must score a lot of goals against weak opposition, because
Mark, you're sounding Dutch, man. You're sounding Dutch, Mark. You're sounding Dutch, Mark. You are also going on the hairband with him. Everybody in Holland is talking about it, man. And now I come here and you jump on it too. Everybody talks about it. They quiet down now, but they were talking about it until he didn't stop doing it. He said, I love it. I do it anyway. So Koeman said, if he likes it, carry on.
Mario, away from the headband, though, it is a problem, isn't it, that you don't have a number 9 of some of the greats that obviously Mark just listed?
Yeah, no, Mark was right. I mean, look, away from what I just replied to him, no, Mark is right. One of the top strikers, look, Depay, what he's good at, he scored the numbers that everybody wants. I think he's 5 goals from, hitting the top. He's, I think, 45 goals now. But what it comes down to is that him at his best is when he's fully fit and playing and everything. He had a couple of injuries, then he comes back, then he doesn't play for a long time. Remember when at Atletico, we were waiting for him to come back, and then he cuts through the tournament. One thing we have to understand, he's one of the most important players, but he was that kind of around the striker. Now he is the striker. So then the way we play becomes different. And also because we expected Poland to sit deep. So we needed to be creative. That's why Simons played on the right and we had Gakpo on the left in the hope that we had to open things up. But they were not sitting back. So that's why it was kind of like, Frimpong came on later, but that's why we could, use more pace and in the team. But we didn't have it from the start because Frimpong, that is what he's really bringing. So for the national team, for Holland, I think, like I said, for England, it's the same thing. You win your first game. That is the most important part. But you have to make sure you keep on growing, because if not, if you play like this every game, it becomes difficult.
Yeah, that's it, isn't it? You compare it, obviously, to Germany and Spain, who had statement victories. This wasn't that. From
Lightweight. And Depay plays like a player that knows there's not really many alternatives at times, And sometimes you need that kick up the backside of a replacement, and they really don't have anybody that can do something similar. I thought the Dutch at times played some good stuff. They're tidy, but I agree the end product is a problem. And also at the other end, they did look vulnerable when Poland played the odd ball over the top and the set piece, obviously, the zonal mark, and they got caught out. They got themselves back in it. They didn't panic. And he made the substitution at the right time, and Weghorst scored a very good goal. But I think they are a little. I mean, they'll play some nice football. The Dutch, they got Dumfries down the right in the first half on quite a few occasions. Couple of half chances against a very, very average Polish side. It has to be said. They're another side that's getting weaker, not stronger. But yeah, I think Koeman clearly by this game has got his hands full. Unless Memphis Depay suddenly finds this form again, and all of a sudden he's bringing other people into play, and they're getting runners from midfield. Of course, there's no Frankie de Jong either in there to control it. So it was a good victory in the end for Koeman. You saw that in his face at the end when he came on. He's like hugging Weghorst like he'd won the World Cup, because the pressure's on him. But I think he can only do so much with this side.
Let's take a look then at how things stand in that group. The Dutch top with 3 points. It's, of course, Austria against France. That's the late game on Monday. France, of course, fancied by many to go all the way. Also on Monday, we'll see Romania against Ukraine and Belgium take on Slovakia. Ooh. Meanwhile, Erik ten Hag has been talking in an interview about Manchester United interviewing other coaches. Manchester United have told me that they spoke with Tuchel, but they eventually came to the conclusion that they already have the best manager. Mario and Mark are still with us.
This is bonkers. This is just not
he did say it. He said it.
Imagine if you say that to your girlfriend.
Imagine.
I just chat to another girl. I've decided
Took someone out on a date, but I've come to the conclusion you're the fittest one.
the conclusion, I'm going to stay with you if you don't leave me. I mean, seriously, what they omitted to say there, what Ten Hag omitted to say was, amongst many other things, was they told me to talk to Tuchel and I'm the best man for the job. They told me to talk to Pochettino, They told me to talk to De Zerbi, I'm the best man for the job. They told me to talk to half the managers in town, and I'm the best. And I'm the best man for the job because I finished with a negative goal difference, eighth, the worst position in the Premier League,
Shambles in the Champions League,
as Manchester United, and was bottom of my Champions League group, and we're absolutely hopeless. So I'm the man for the job. I mean, it's this man. I mean, apart from the fact, clearly, you're not going to walk out because you want your money. He's got a contract. You want your money. If you're going to leave a club, you want to leave with a big bag of dough. You don't want to just give it up.
I think I'd have a little bit more respect for him if he did walk.
That's my point. Is how can you have any respect for yourself in a job if your bosses are out there, and by the way, ours might be.
That's been happening to Dan for years.
The way this show's gone,
I can't find anyone cheaper.
The way this show's gone today, our boss could be out there now on the blower. Who knows? But publicly, they have done it. And has he no respect for himself? They have touted themselves around everybody, and now he's coming out with more nonsense. I'm actually embarrassed for him. When you would walk, wouldn't you?
I mean, you would. I mean, what can he do in that scenario? I mean, he shouldn't have probably been honest in saying that. He's being too honest, right? Because what's to gain from it? It makes you look like a bit of a laughingstock.
Mario, he was speaking on Dutch TV as a pundit. You watched it all. What was the kind of the sense of the whole conversation?
One of the biggest things what came up, one of the topics in the conversation was him highlighting, of course, that he continue his job. So I said it already before on the show. I said, look, if he's not part of the future, then he should not stay. Okay. Then this conversation picks up. He said that, one of the hosts asked him, he said, what's happening? He said, look, they spoke to different managers, but clearly they flew all the way. He was in Ibiza. They flew all the way there and had the conversation with him. He then highlighted certain problems that he wanted to fix, and they were open to it. So now he's in the middle of negotiating a new deal. Wow. So when that deal takes place, then he wants the extension to what he has now, because I think he's got the last, one more season left. So they're going to extend that. And then also going to maybe acquire certain individuals that he's looking for. So guys, I understand you guys are not happy, but hey, Dutchman Ten Hag is not going anywhere. So Mark, I'm sorry for you. He's staying, and we just have to see what he's bringing.
Not acquiring any individuals that Erik Ten Hag wants. No chance. Not a chance.
No,
because he's already look who he's signed.
No, I understand what you say, because that was one of the things that I highlighted, that some of the questions was that some of the individuals that he brought to the club didn't perform that he expected them to do. Okay, but one of the things I'm almost guaranteed, if they extend his deal, he will have influence on who's coming.
Right.
Even if it's not all, like if they get 5 players, it will be 2 then at least.
Here is the absolute 100% obvious question mark. If he's got a deal that ends at the end of next season, given what we've seen leading up to this summer, why on this green earth would you give him any more years?
Well, United have an option, a 12-month option in their favour, which can extend it. So basically, they might just do that. They might just do what is in the contract anyway. But it's not all on Erik Ten Hag's side. This United, certainly since Jim Ratcliffe and Ineos came in, United have wanted to change the terms of his contracts in the sense that until now, Erik Ten Hag had a so-called veto on the signings or the final say. And we've seen that on the back of that, they've signed players that haven't really done well for Man United. They want to change the model whereby the new structure, which will eventually be headed up by Dan Ashworth as the director of football, that will have the final say. So basically, Ten Hag will say, I want a right back, and they'll say, right, we've got X, Y, and Z. It's going to be one of these. So that if and when the manager goes, they've got a squad of players which is built by the sporting director, football director, rather than the coach. So the new contract may involve taking out that veto. So that's why Ten Hag has said it's not agreed yet, because I think there's a bit of negotiating to do in the sense that he wants certain things, but the club wants certain things as well. And they might not be mutually compatible. But obviously Ten Hag feels he's in a strong position now because he knows that basically, as we said last week, that Ineos have bottled it in a sense that the fans have kind of put their weight behind Ten Hag. They want him to stay. They don't like any of the candidates that might come in. But obviously, given a new contract, have terms that are favourable to the club as well. And if it doesn't work well next season, after 6 months, they can get rid of him on maybe a reduced terms. And, there's a bit of work to be done. But I don't think any of us talking about Ten Hag right now really believe that he's the man that Ineos want, which means that if he has a bad start next season or even has a run of bad results some way through the season, it gives them the excuse to move him on. So a new contract means nothing. It just means that both sides can get to put in a little bit of what they want and hopefully get what they want. So we'll see what happens. But he'll sign a new contract, but it might not be totally in his favour. It might be more weighted towards the club. But ultimately, he wants to stay at Man United because they're one of the biggest clubs in the world. And somebody at some point is going to get it right.
Do you know who this helps, Dan? Man City, Liverpool, Villa, Newcastle, Chelsea. No one will be
I don't
panicking.
think Man City, Arsenal care
No,
about
but
what Liverpool
no one will be panicking. This is a chance for Man United to try and make a statement, have a fresh start. If it was Pochettino, whoever it might be, Tuchel, at least it can give the Man United fans, who I think have been swayed because of the FA Cup win, which has been great for them. The tactics in that game were fantastic. But I think they've been very short-sighted, the club, and they've looked at the positives, which is 2 trophies in 2 years. But they're forgetting all the rubbish that we've been watching. Shambles in the Champions League, like embarrassing. Embarrassing when they lost against Bournemouth. Embarrassing when they lost against Crystal Palace. Could have been 7. You're watching a team that was proper dysfunctional. And to give Erik Ten Hag a sort of stay of execution, I just feel doesn't scare anyone else in the Premier League.
Well, Manchester United won the Manchester United won the FA Cup because Manchester City were abysmal.
Are they playing well, Man United, though?
Only because Man City were abysmal by their standards. If Man City even reached 75% of the standards they've set in the last 4 or 5 years, it would have been a cakewalk, right? And the very fact that they were a big toe away from going out to Coventry, I mean, it goes back to the point I made, a week or 2 ago. If any of us have been swayed by fans, right, who pay their money, they're entitled to their opinion, but they generally don't, a lot of them just don't know a lot. They're swayed by the odd result, fickle results here and there, right? You have to look at the bigger picture. And any of us here are making themselves look quite amateurish in this role at the moment. The way they've gone about this, the way they're handling it, the wording of it, the way that Ten Hag's coming out and talking about it, because everybody and anybody with an inkling of how this sport is played and watched Manchester United over the course of the whole season knows last year, even with the injuries, Erik Ten Hag was out his depth last year, out of his depth. There is half a dozen managers in the Premier League alone that would have got more out of that United side with the injuries than he did. And yet we're having to sit and listen to all this spiel, and Man United fans, for the most part, think they've won the lottery because Erik Ten Hag is staying. They've conveniently forgot what they've watched for 12 months, which was, for the most part, apart from the cup final, the semi-final was atrocious, absolutely atrocious. The cup final was decent, I'll give you that. The Liverpool games were decent. And then amongst it, I could count in one hand over 38 league games, how many were above the mediocre. And yet they think, United fans and any of us think, this is the right thing to do. It boggles the mind.
So Ten Hag is staying, but who should be chucked out? Who should go? We saw Mark Ogden and Gab Margotti collaborate on this article. Who should they keep? Who should they dump during the summer? Let's take a look who Mark wants out. Sancho, Casemiro, Lindelof, McTominay, Greenwood, Van der Beek, Wan-Bissaka, Christian Eriksen, and Anthony as well. Now, that's a lovely list, Mark. Beautiful list. I think most would agree with that list. But who the heck is buying any of those players?
Well, that is the problem United have got. They've got all these players that cost a lot of money on massive contracts. So they're going to have to be creative if they can. They're going to have to maybe do a few loan deals. But this is the problem United have got. It's going to take at least 2 windows to rectify that. At least 2 windows, because they've got to kind of get people out. They've got a lot of players whose contracts expire next summer. They're going to have to either sell this summer or just let them run the contract down. So it's going to take a lot of time to kind of, peel the onion, I should say. It's a mess. But they have to start this summer. But we've been talking about this for 3-4 years now. They've got to get rid of certain players. Anthony Martial's gone, finally. He's been there for 9 years and he's gone. His contract's expired. Rafael Varane has gone. But it's not going to be a quick fix because they can't get all these players out and replace them straight away. So they're just going to have to do what they can. But the problem is the people that Ineos want to employ to do that job, to run the recruitment and bring players in and get rid of them, aren't there yet. Dan Ashworth isn't there. So the people who are doing it this summer haven't got the expertise to do it. So it's not going to end well, is it?
I'm having a moment here.
Oh, okay.
I'm having a moment.
Is it a positive moment?
Don should have a moment as well. Maybe Mario should have a moment. Maybe Mario should have a moment as well. I'll tell you why. Because I was looking down that list, and if there was ever proof needed that, my God, we were born in the wrong era, with Scott McTominay is earning 125 grand a week.
Were you nowhere near that?
God.
You would tackle him, eh? You would tackle him. You would probably tackle him. That's what he would be doing.
I want to see the list again. Was Jadon Sancho 250?
Yes.
I mean, at least Scott McTominay puts a shift in. And he tries to earn his money. 250 a week.
Are you saying that no one's going to come along?
But Sancho cost £70 million.
Yeah.
Sancho cost £70 million. That's why they give him a big pay packet, and that's the crazy thing about it.
How much, Oggy, are Man United paying him to be on loan?
Well, this is the question, because Dortmund haven't got the money to pay all of it. So I'd imagine it's around half of it. Even if that, I mean, if Dortmund are paying 100 grand a week, I'd be surprised. But they had no choice. They're in a real mess with Sancho, because any club that wants to take him knows that he's damaged goods. He's never going to play again under Ten Hag. So they can lowball United, because nobody is going to say, yeah, we'll give you £50 million for him and we'll pay him 200 grand a week. It ain't going to happen. So United have got a real problem with Sancho, because he has no value because of the situation with the manager.
Oh, wow. Casemiro loving life, isn't he?
But I think isn't it that he wants to... I think he wants to extend his deal as well. I think he wants to stay at Dortmund. That's the next conversation that they're having with him, because I think he highlighted, because definitely if Ten Hag extends his deal, why he wants to come back. We already knew that already in advance, because I don't think he will put that step back that people expect him to do. So then him going back to Man United, and I know Ten Hag, he can be very stubborn. If he doesn't apologize or whatever he's looking for, he's not coming back. So then
great point,
probably they will try their best to keep him there.
Great point that Mario makes there, because if Ineos are having the conversation with Ten Hag and they've said, we're going to keep you, you're the best, what are you going to do with Jadon Sancho? And Ten Hag says, well, he's not coming back. And they go, can't you build them bridges? Because he's a good player. Look what he's done in the Champions League for Dortmund. Can't you build? No, he's gone. So there's like an immediate problem straight away. It just causes absolute havoc. Because Sancho is saying, well, I'm not coming back to Man United if the manager stays. It's crazy.
People were scratching their head at the time why Casemiro walked from Real Madrid to Manchester with a backpack and a sandwich and a bottle of water and was still smiling. Then that's the reason, isn't it? And it was 5 years, wasn't it?
Yep.
For a great player, but a great player who's...
But people get old. There you are. See, it's the Don insight that we bring.
The philosopher there.
Mark, thank you very much. Enjoy your evening at the Reaper Barn. Just a reminder, the Gavin Jules podcast will be available on Monday. Both are, of course, live in Germany, following all the action. Be sure to catch their latest pod which drops tomorrow. Also tomorrow, of course, we'll be back to reflect on France's opener. If you're watching us now on YouTube, we'll say goodbye to you. If you're on ESPN Plus, well, come and join us on ESPN Plus. The show continues.